Let's get more on this. Joe Siracusa joins us from Perth, Australia. He's a professor of political history and diplomacy at Curtin University. Joe, a lot of momentum has been building over the last couple of weeks behind Kamala and Waltz. Polls showing movement towards them. Could it be? Is it enough?
Good afternoon, Charlotte. No, not yet. You know, she still has a lot of work to do. Your package there suggests that she's going to some coronation. Not quite. You know, what she has to do is she has this opportunity to reintroduce herself to the American people, that she's a fit candidate. Keep in mind that in 2019, when she ran for president, she didn't win a single delegate. She dropped out before the Iowa primary. She was a failure, but she was a nice vice presidential candidate for a president who didn't really think, or for a fellow who didn't really think he was going to replace her while he was still in office. And also, she has to win over a party. She has to convince her own party that she can run the Democratic Party. She is not the natural leader of the Democrats, and she was not their choice by any means. And she's in charge of a party that is deeply divided over the war in Gaza and the war in Israel. And keep in mind, you know, there are 40,000 protesters who are going to make a lot of hell for the Chicago Police Department in the next couple days. And then, of course, she has to win over those people who have lingering doubts that she can take on Donald Trump. Trump is still very formidable, while the polls indicate that she is within the margin of error to win certain battleground states. There's nothing firm about these things. They can change very quickly. But, you know, this is Donald Trump's election to lose. He was on top of this before she got this, well, let's call it what it is, a free pass. She didn't win any primary votes. She just came in through the back door here, and now she has to prove herself.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about those swing states. Obviously, they will be crucial. What are some of the key issues in these places, and what does Kamala and the Democrats need to do to persuade swing voters in those states?
Well, in Michigan and in Wisconsin, or Minnesota, she has to prove to people, particularly Arab Americans, Palestinian Americans, Muslim Americans, that she's got a handle on the war in the Middle East. There is a very large uncommitted group there, which normally votes Democratic, who are going to hold her accountable for this. And they're not just satisfied with, you know, Tony Blinken's 9th trip to the Middle East to solve nothing. They're blaming the Democratic Party for the carnage that has taken place there. They're not going to let her or Biden off the hook. So she's got to show the progressive wing of the Democratic Party that she's serious about rebuilding Gaza, that she's serious about righting the wrongs there, that she's serious about sidelining Netanyahu, and she hasn't done any of these things yet. And of course, the other thing too is the economy. She made it very clear, and I think her speech was very good the other day. She's talking about helping the working man, woman, and the middle class to be able to have a quality of life, whereas she contrasted that with Donald Trump, who's talking about corporations and billionaires. And, you know, she made it very clear that she's going to use the economy to get people tax credits and make things easier for them. And she's going after the corporations, particularly the people who control the food prices. So she's made herself a champion of the ordinary men and women in the United States. On the other hand, she's got to prove to the big donors in the Democratic Party that she's worth their time and effort. They had pretty much written off this election. Joe Biden was frankly unfit to run. Of course, now he's still unfit to serve, as a matter of fact. So she has a lot of baggage. But her next 3 days are going to be crucial for her.
Joe, you've talked about Gaza and that being an issue on voters' mind. You've talked about the economy. What about this issue of immigration, which is such a hot topic in the US? Where does she stand on that? And do you think she can show voters that she's tough on illegal immigration?
Well, she wants to control the borders. President Biden gave her the task of sort of solving the problem. On the other hand, he gave her a task that was bound to fail. I mean, no one person can solve this without the legislative branches of the United States government. I mean, it's got to be solved by laws and by a lot more money. She's promised more people down there and more compassionate ways of getting into the United States. Kamala Harris, it was never hers to solve the border problem. Biden gave it to her because it was one of those things he couldn't handle himself. And so he gave her something she really couldn't do, nobody could do. And she didn't do a very good job of it. And so she looks very weak on this. She's weak on it because it's a very difficult problem. But your listeners have to understand something. We get 11 million people who come through America who are just storming the gates, so to speak. And, you know, if there weren't a demand for their services, you know, if there weren't grapes and lettuce to pick in California and factories to be worked in Iowa and abattoirs to be worked in Pennsylvania, this cheap labor wouldn't come in. You know, these people are not just coming in taking jobs. They're coming in and doing jobs Americans won't do themselves. So there's that kind of pressure beneath the surface that we haven't dealt with very openly in the press. But look, it's a very difficult problem, and Americans do worry about it. But I'll tell you what, nothing worries Americans more than the cost of living, the cost of petrol, the cost of housing, the quality of life.
Absolutely, and that is understandable. I think, Joe Siracusa, great to chat to you again on the NewsHour.
Thank you.